Energy Secretary Claire Coutinho is with me now, as you can see, to talk about the UK's investment in nuclear fuel. Very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning.
Very much looking forward to getting on to the nuclear discussion in just a moment. But wanted to start by talking about Grant Shapps's comments in Parliament yesterday. Mel Stride was in your chair this time yesterday and sort of deferred commenting on this hack on an MOD contractor because Grant Shapps was still to speak. Obviously, we've heard from him now. We didn't get a confirmation of who was behind the hack. And I just wonder whether the government is denying that it was China behind the hack or not.
So we have now named the contractor in question, and
it was hacked.
Yeah, and this is what's happened. So basically, what we've done is we've made sure we've isolated the network. And security investigation is happening at the moment, and support is being provided to any of the personnel who were affected to make sure that they can get their payments on time. So we're not now naming what's happened. Grant yesterday talked about a malign actor, but that's because we want to establish the facts fully.
I guess the only follow-up I would have is whether this sort of appears weak, therefore, to China. We've reported that China, based on government sources, was behind it. Others have as well. China's even responded via their foreign minister and called out the UK government as part of that. I just wonder whether, to them, by not naming it and making it public, it'll just be a sort of rather weak response.
Well, no, look, you would expect government ministers to want to establish facts, particularly when it comes to matters of national security. And I would say in the last couple of weeks alone, we have set out an increase to our defence spending. And in that document, we talked about the fact that countries like China are now acting in a coordinated and sometimes hostile way. So we have taken a very robust position on this overall, but I think it's right in this instance to make sure that we get all the facts together.
On to the announcement today. Talk to us about where you want nuclear power as a source of UK energy to be by a milestone. I think you're talking about 2050 as the target.
Yes, so this is going to be a really important part of our energy mix going forward. And that's why just after Christmas, I set out the largest expansion of nuclear power in 70 years. And the announcement that we're making today will mean that we'll be the first commercial producer of advanced nuclear fuel. And the only other producer at the moment is Russia. So we'll be the first country to be able to produce alongside them. So that's really important for our energy security. This is the kind of fuel that the next generation of nuclear, which is cheaper and more efficient, is going to need, and will also be able to supply our allies abroad as well.
And this is largely because of new technology on modular reactors, which will be smaller and more of them around the country than previous nuclear technology?
Exactly. So you've got the big giga power plants that people will be aware of, and we're building those as well. You've then got small modular reactors, which is the kind of nuclear power you'll be able to build in a factory, so much cheaper. You'll be able to roll them out across the country. And advanced modular reactors, which again are another new generation of very efficient factory-built nuclear power as well. So this is all first-of-a-kind technology. Britain is at the forefront of this. And as I said, we are massively backing nuclear, and we set out the largest expansion in 70 years just after Christmas.
I mean, obviously, new innovation is something that we all welcome. In light of it, does it make funding of the Hinkwell and greenlighting the Hinkwell plant, which is much more traditional, included Chinese partnership as well, funny that we bring it up today, was that a mistake?
So in terms of the latest power plant, which is Sizewell C, that's going to be the first British-backed nuclear power plant that we've had in generations. And we actually bought out the Chinese from that particular power plant. But I would say this is all in stark contrast to the last Labour government, who built no nuclear whatsoever. And actually, if you want to have cheaper nuclear build going forward, what you can't have is a stop-start approach where, like in the last Labour government, they didn't build any nuclear, which is why the plans that I've set out cover 30 years. And as I say, it will be the largest expansion that we've had in about 7 decades.
I get that, but I guess people might be, even if it's new technology, people might be sceptical of plans to deliver new nuclear power plants going forward, because thus far the Hinkwell plan is much delayed, well overrun in terms of costs, and you've had to remove China as a partner from it.
Well, like I said, what's really important when it comes to building nuclear cheaply and efficiently is that you don't have this stop-start approach. So not only are we setting out plans to give people confidence about what we're doing next, we've also been investing in nuclear skills. So about a month ago, I set out plans for a £700 million investment. So we've got the right skills in this country as well. And all of these things are positive news, because not only does this mean you can have cheap, and secure energy, but also these are really high quality, well-paid jobs. So yesterday I went to Capenhurst to go and see the site where we're going to make this advanced nuclear fuel. I met apprentices. I could see the excitement in their eyes because this is a wonderful sector to work in, which is why we are backing it.
I wanted to ask a sort of linked question, which is about the extent to which at the moment sanctions on Russia are actually working or not. Clearly, we've seen that exports of their raw crude products to India have soared, and at the same time, of refined products have grown for a lot of the Western world, the UK in particular, from India. Do the sanctions need to be totally readdressed?
So we've been at the forefront of this argument on sanctions, and when it comes to Russian oil and gas, we don't have any in our system, and I speak to my international counterparts about what more they can do in Europe, although I have to say they've come a very long way. And the steps that we've taken today, for example, in advanced nuclear fuel, it just goes to show that you can't think about these things just by one sector. You have to look across the whole of our energy supply. I always say that we can't have weaned ourselves of Russian oil and gas just to be dependent on someone else for critical minerals or someone else for nuclear fuel. So that's exactly the work that I do in government. And if I may, I do think it is worth just contrasting this with the Labour approach, because actually what they've set out is plans to decarbonise the grid by 2030 faster than any other country, which wouldn't allow us time to do the work that I'm doing to build up British supply chains, which would leave us dependent on other countries, including China.
Well, it's fair to say that we don't have as much of our energy, whether it's crude oil or natural gas, imported at source from Russia as many of our continental European counterparts, because we get a lot from North Sea and a lot from Norway as well. My question's not so much about that. It's secondary derivative effects. It's quite clear from economic analysis, in part carried out by Ed Conway, our reporter, that the sanctions aren't fully working, whichever country we look at, because they're managing to export to third countries like India, but not just India, and then we and other Western countries are buying the refined products, so it doesn't appear as if it's coming in from Russia. I guess this is a broad question as to all Western nations. Should we look at the sanctions again and change them so that they actually are effective?
Well, we keep everything under review, and as I said, I'm always raising these issues with my counterparts, because if we've seen anything over the last 2 years, is that we've all got to work together to make sure that our energy supplies are resilient, and actually we cannot be left dependent on actors like Putin or China when it comes to things like critical minerals and batteries, which is why we've taken steps in this country to make sure that we can build more British energy, like the nuclear power I'm talking today, but also give ourselves the time that we need to make sure that we can have resilience.
It's interesting you mentioned Russia and China there in the same bracket. Just to quickly wrap up and come back to where we started. Is China in the same bracket in terms of adversary as Russia?
Well, so if you look at the defence spending, which we set out a couple of weeks ago, the increased defence spending, we're already one of the largest spenders in NATO, but we're going further. We talked about Russia, Iran and China as being 3 actors which are now starting to coordinate. And again, this is something that we've grasped. We're taking plans to make sure the nation is secure. And I think just to say again, I don't think Labour have said that they're going to commit to those plans.
Claire Coutinho, thanks so much for joining us. Much appreciated. The Energy Security Secretary, Claire Coutinho.